among some Republicans to say, oh no, we need to regulate this more. No, we need to regulate it less.
Right.
And what we need to do is lift that protection they have under Section 230 and let them be subject to having been scrutinized in court by a judge.
Hi, this is Michael Graham with New Hampshire Journal. Welcome to Diner Table Economics, sponsored by the Competitiveness Coalition, a first-of-its-kind group that champions pro-consumer policies to create jobs, foster innovation, and attract investments. So Governor Christie, welcome, and thank you for being the first contestant on Diner Table Economics. So a train leaves Chicago going to, no, I'm kidding. We wanted to sit down with you and talk about the one thing that seems to be almost overlooked in the campaign thus far, which is the economic fortunes of America. And other than a few conversations about energy policy, there's not a lot of conversation. So this conversation is entirely about what would the economy be like under President Christie. So big picture, what is your overall economic vision? What should a president be doing when it comes to the economy?
First thing is we have to restore economic growth to a 4 or 5% level. We need to do that for two reasons. It's going to enhance opportunity and income for our citizens, and it's going to help us get out of the enormous debt and deficit that we're in. Second, we're going to want to cut spending at the federal level, and we have to cut spending, first of all, because we have a $2 trillion deficit this year. Right, so it is impossible to sustain. And when you see interest rates where they are right now, our national debt payments are going to be $1 trillion a year. And that's just obscene and wrong. And what it also does, as you know, Michael, is create the inflation that folks have been dealing with that is really an awful tax on them and their ability to be able to sustain their lives, raise their families. So we have to go through reducing government spending. I want to do it by doing what I did in New Jersey, which was zero-based budgeting. And what that means for everyone who's listening is that you don't assume a level of spending for every year based on the last year. You make people come in and say you're starting at zero. Justify every dollar it is you want to spend. And what that does is make people think about spending in a much different way. Rather than how much more am I going to get, it's going to be how do I justify what I've already done for the future. So that, I believe, will bring inflation down as well. Because I saw this morning, mortgage rates are up over 8%.
Right.
People are not going to be able to afford to buy a home. And that's going to really hurt our economy and hurt the future of other Americans.
So two things that you put in. One is 4 or 5% growth. I want to get to that in a second. But first, when you said, kind of the big picture, et cetera, I want to run some things by you. So you've got the Reaganomic approach. Cut taxes, count on growth. Don't worry about deficits because growth will overcome deficits. You've got the new approach from some people call them national conservatives of industrial policy. Let's do things like the CHIPS Act, where we're going to say that business, that industry, we're going to give them money, something that state governors like to do a lot of that.
Yep.
And then there's just kind of the freewheeling free market. Where would you put yourself on that spectrum?
Look, I think I'm more of a free market person. I look at where we are in terms of taxes, and I think we should maintain the tax cuts that were passed in 2017. They're up for renewal in 2025. I wouldn't renew all of them, but I would renew most of them. Secondly, I'm not someone who wants to use the government too much to tinker with the market. There are certain areas that I think we should do it in when it also enhances our national security. So CHIPS Act, for instance, is not just about manufacturing, it's also about national security. And I would look for those type of combinations where you can get a twofer from whatever you do with the federal spending.
Just to be clear, if someone walked in and said, yes, we want the government to get involved in the economy directly for this specific cause, your answer would not be an immediate no.
It would not be an immediate no. I would listen to it, but my inclination would be no.
Right.
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Perfect timing.
All right.
Nailed it. How are you?
You want a cup of coffee or something?
Some hot tea would be
Hot
great.
tea?
Yeah.
Milk?
Honey. Honey.
I don't know if I can trust a president of the United States who drinks tea and not coffee. Is that allowed? I don't know.
It is.
I'll take a
We'll
real
allow
coffee, black, straight up.
Excellent.
Thank you. And by the way, what's so funny about that is that we have this conversation. That'll be what the thing.
That's
people
what
talk
everybody
about.
will talk about.
So
Absolutely
why
right.
tea? I'm just
Always
curious.
have.
Really?
Always have. Never been a coffee drinker my entire life.
Okay, back to the economy.
Yes.
And our tea. So the growth, 5% growth. There are people who, as soon as they see you say that, they're just going to roll their eyes. They're going to say, oh, come on. That's a politician talking. We're a mature economy. We don't do 5% growth for a sustained period. You have weird moments, maybe like with the tech boom, when we discovered the internet in the 90s, or maybe coming out of the horrible fake recession from COVID because we killed our own economy. But you're not going to have consistent growth like that.
Well, the way I would tell them that
One
they're
second.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Cream cheese on the end, okay?
The way I would tell them they're wrong about that is that we are about to reach another one of those moments, I think, economically, of extraordinary innovation. Artificial intelligence is about to become a force multiplier for our economy. And I think if we have a president who understands that there's an opportunity for enormous growth for a period of time in this country, then you can take advantage of it. I'm not afraid of artificial intelligence. I know that what we have to do is make sure that we regulate it in the right way from a national security perspective, but I think it's going to be an incredible force multiplier for our economy, create all kinds of new opportunity, and can lead to 4 and 5% growth.
And this is my point about what the style of economics is, because as you know, there are people in more the industrial policy side who are saying, stop the AI, control the AI. We must have governance of the AI. And then, of course, the traditional free market laissez-faire is let the AI fly, and we'll see who's the best, and don't worry about Skynet becoming viable and killing us all with our own nukes.
These were the same people who were telling us back in the late 90s to control the internet. And that the internet was going to lead to horrible things for the economy. And what it did was lead to extraordinary growth in our economy and the opportunities that have been created, what we're doing right here.
Right, exactly.
Right? This opportunity, media evolving and changing, and us being able to have long-form conversations that people want to listen to, and advertisers being willing to buy onto that. That didn't exist when George W. Bush and Al Gore were campaigning up here in 2000, even though Al Gore had invented the internet.
Yes, he did.
That didn't exist then. Right. So, no, I think that's why they're so wrong. America is always best when it's innovating fearlessly.
Right.
And it leads the rest of the world, always has, and when I'm president, will continue to.
So fear, debt equals fear. You mentioned the $33 trillion debt. And a question people ask is, when will, this is the framing, when will Washington get serious about actually driving the debt down? That will involve sacrifices, compromises. Not everybody gets all the lollipops that they were promised.
Yep.
What's more important, the debt or the growth? You said you want to be a 4-5% growth guy. There are a lot of people who say that's fine if you want to spend a lot of government money.
Well, no, I don't want to spend government money. I want the private sector to invest and incentivize them to invest. And the way to incentivize them is to deregulate. And to not have the government foot on their throat. Right. Let them build their businesses the way they want to. I don't see the connection between long-term growth and government spending. Government spending can only be, like it was during COVID, a short-term inducement, but you can't sustain that forever. Look, I'm the only person who's had on this race that's had experience with this. When I became governor of New Jersey, I had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget, inherited from my predecessor, and everybody thought I was going to have to raise taxes to fix it because we have a constitutional requirement to balance the budget, so we can't run debt. I went to zero-based budgeting. What that led to in our first year was the complete elimination of 683 programs. We balanced the budget by cutting spending. And what happened in New Jersey? Unemployment in my term as governor went down by 2/3. Growth went up. Job growth went up. It can happen. Now, on the federal level, it's going to be much harder.
Right.
You're talking about $2 trillion in deficit, not debt.
Yeah, insane.
Right? So it's an 8-year project. And I also know that I will become less popular when I do it. All right?
I hope you're enjoying this edition of Diner Table Economics, brought to you by the supporters of New Hampshire Journal and by the Competitiveness Coalition. The coalition believes that American businesses should prosper through competition and free markets. Kind of a perfect fit with the live free or die spirit of New Hampshire. Perhaps it's not a coincidence then that a New Hampshire resident, former U.S. Ambassador Scott Brown, is heading up the coalition along with help from our own Josiah Bartlett Center for Public Policy. They're pushing back against Biden administration regulatory overreach, particularly from the Federal Trade Commission. They don't believe that politicians and unelected bureaucrats should be punishing American businesses or stifling innovation through unfair taxation or overburdened regulations. Why would it help America to take apart some of our most successful companies? After all, breaking up successful American companies only helps China and our other economic challengers abroad. Want to learn more? Visit competitivenesscoalition.com.
I used to own a small business, and we just recently closed. And I really hope that people support small mom and pop companies, and that maybe the government can assist with that.
What you're going to expect to see is the government much less involved in your life.
Okay.
The government much less picking on every little form you need to fill out,
Right.
every little IRS agent that you have to kowtow to.
Right.
I want you to go and spend your time running your business and figuring out how to make it bigger, hire more people, grow it, innovate it. That's what I want for a small business owner. That's what I want them to see. And we'll keep taxes at the level they are at now so that you have certainty in your planning. This is what my expenses are going to be, and I can plan them. I'm not going to have to worry about taxes going up. But what also is going to happen is inflation is going to come down because government will be spending less, not priming the pump the way we've been doing, and overheating the economy. And as inflation comes down, you have more of your own money to spend, and your employees do too.
Excellent. So you mentioned deregulation. There are two FTC actions going on right now, Amazon and Meta. I think that's right. Yeah,
And Google, I think.
Google,
too.
no, you're right. Yeah, Amazon, Google, thank
Yep.
you. And the premise used to be for antitrust, how are consumers doing? Now we have this new Lena Khan thing. Are you just too big? What do you we don't like how you do business. And interestingly, Republican Governor Chris Sununu signed off on the Biden administration's lawsuit against Amazon, which really surprised a lot of people. Where are you on the issue of antitrust, and what should the purpose of a Christie administration's antitrust department be? Is it to work on consumers? Is it to regulate how business does business?
Oh, look, I think Lena Khan is a disaster. And I think what she's doing with business, and you see it also with the Activision Blizzard sale to Microsoft,
right.
Where we're now, it's 20 months since they announced it, right? And I think the deadline is in 2 weeks now where they're going to finally make a decision.
Right.
The EU has signed off on it. Other regulators who are not known as easy regulators have signed off on it. Look, I think that the way you have to look at antitrust law is the traditional way we looked at it, the way the original trust buster, Teddy Roosevelt, looked at it, which was if a business gets so big and dominant in a space that there is no pricing competition that then impacts the everyday consumer, that you have to break that up.
Right.
I don't see that right now. I don't see it with Google, and I don't see it necessarily with Amazon. Now, they're going to do this case, and we're all going to learn more about it. But I think if you're asking for what a Christie administration FTC chairman would look like, that person would look like someone who is looking out for the consumer first. Follow the Teddy Roosevelt theory of why trusts are bad, why monopolies are bad, not this new Lena Khan approach that we just don't like the way you look. That's not something that I would favor at all.
So once again, back to this question of where is the Republican Party? Is it a, let businesses go party, or is it a, crackdown national, industrial policy party? The Josiah Bartlett Center in New Hampshire and the Competitive Coalition did a poll and asked primary voters, do you want more regulation of these businesses like Amazon? Do you want to see them broken up? And interestingly, overwhelmingly, 70-75%, they said no. I like how business is operating. Why would an administration get involved in like Amazon? My wife lives on Amazon, and you're going to tell her we're going to slow it down, make them break up, take it away? I don't understand.
Well, look, I think there's a philosophical approach from the Biden administration that just says any business that is big is by definition bad. And then there's some big government Republicans who want to control business. Ron DeSantis is a big government Republican. He's saying, well, if Disney opposes a bill that I like, I get to punish Disney by using the levers of government to do it. And some Republicans, in an unthinking way, were okay with that. But what happens if that was Gavin Newsom doing that because someone opposed a liberal bill of his? Republicans would be up in arms. We need to be consistent on this. Government should not be involved in regulating business speech, shouldn't be involved in over-regulating what business does. Everything that we do in terms of regulation should be to make sure that it's safe for the consumer, safe for them to be able to spend their money, and make sure that they're not going to be harmed physically.
So you mentioned the model of punishing corporations, but there are a bunch of voters, particularly Republican primary voters, who say, look, these big companies, not the shopping ones, but say the big tech ones,
Right.
that control, that involved in our messaging, Twitter,
Meta,
Facebook, etc.,
yeah.
that they're against us. And you saw what they did, for example, during the 2020 election. I mean, we're in the journalism business. I can't imagine censoring an entire newspaper over a story that, by the way, turned out to be basically true.
Yeah.
So what would you say to people who say, look, I know what you mean by free market, but these comms companies, we'll call them that, the ones who control what I see and hear and what I get to say, they have too much power, and I wanted President Christie to punch them in the face and get them back in the box.
Well, here's the way we do it. The free market isn't being allowed to work on Facebook and Twitter and the other social media sites because they have protection from civil liability in the federal law.
Right.
It was given to them when the internet first started,
Right.
in order to let them to grow. They've grown, as we know. That should go away. They made the argument back then that we're nothing but a bulletin board.
Right,
So we
exactly.
can't be held responsible
Exactly.
because we don't edit. We now know that's a lie. They do edit.
Right.
They do decide what to put on and what
Right.
not to put on. They do set up algorithms that allow certain things to move forward and other things to be pushed in the background. Well, if you want to do that and you make that decision, then you lose your civil liability protection. And so voters out there should be able to sue them in civil court if their speech is being infringed
Exactly.
upon, if it's affecting their business. So I think there's a misunderstanding, maybe it's intentional, among some Republicans to say, oh no, we need to regulate this more. No, we need to regulate it less.
Right.
And what we need to do is lift that protection they have
Right.
under Section 230
Exactly.
and let them be subject to being scrutinized in court by a judge.
So exactly, and why are they tracking what people do and what my preferences? Okay, so maybe I like Hello Kitty websites a lot. Maybe
Right.
is that a problem? Why are you judging me?
Well, it's not that it's a problem.
Well, I don't know.
They
My-
just
Just don't tell
should
my
know
wife.
about it.
Just don't tell my wife. Okay, so I'm going to put you in a tough spot,
All right.
Rory. I want you to say something nice about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, but we're going to follow it up with saying something less nice. Nobody's perfect and nobody's perfectly awful. The smart things, name one each that they have done or did while president.
On the economy.
On the economy, specifically on the economy.
Okay.
Thank you.
For Trump, it was the Trump tax cuts
Right.
in 2017. They led to real growth and I think made the economy better. For Joe Biden, I think the Infrastructure Act. We needed
Right.
to invest in our infrastructure, and I think that was a smart thing for him to do economically. On the bad side, Donald Trump ran up $7.8 trillion in debt when he told us he was going to balance the budget in 4 years. That's not only a bald-faced lie. Think about it. When he left office, the national debt was $28 trillion. That means he himself, in 4 years, ran up 25% of all the debt we've had in the history of the country.
Right.
Why would we ever put someone like that back behind the desk in the Oval Office? He lied to us, and he gave us an enormous amount of debt. On Joe Biden, I would say it's the same thing. He's now run up about $5 trillion
Right.
in debt in his nearly 3 years, right? So he must be jealous of Trump. He's going to try to catch him. They both are old-time baby boomers, say yes to everybody, free love, free everything. That's who these guys are, okay?
Right.
And it's time for that generation to go home. Donald Trump needs to go back to Mar-a-Lago and sit by the pool and play golf, and Joe
Right.
Biden needs to go back to Rehoboth, Delaware, and sit on the beach and leave us alone. It's time to do something completely different than these two, and those are the worst things they've both done economically.
So every time there's an economic question in the debates, whatever, everyone runs to the word inflation. And it's, I think in a way it's almost like a dodge because it lets you say, ooh, inflation bad, and then no specifics. So someone here at the diner, I asked them, what's your question for Governor Christie? Number one question about the economy. They said, Social Security, because my income is fixed. My medical costs are changing under the new rules on Medicare. And guess what? Price is going up. My income is fixed. So what do you say to someone like that?
Well, that's why you have to get inflation down, because the fact is that what I would also say to this person is, because of the policies of Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Social Security is going to go bankrupt in 11 years.
Right.
And when it does, the law requires an automatic 24% cut in their benefits. So they think inflation's
Right.
bad on what's happening. Imagine if you have inflation and a 24% reduction in your benefit. So we need to do two things. First is that's why you have to control inflation, because of folks like that who lived on a fixed income, or even if they supplement their Social Security with other retirement income like a 401k or an IRA, it's still fixed.
Right.
They're not adding to it anymore. Secondly, on Social Security, we need to be honest about this. For people in their 30s and 40s, we need to raise the retirement age.
Right.
We have to. And I have a son who's 30 years old. If he can't deal in the next 40 years
Exactly.
with a couple of year increase in the retirement age, we got bigger problems with him than just the retirement age. And
But I
so,
want to force you back, though, to the inflation
Yeah.
question. What can a president actually do? Because trust me, Joe Biden would love for inflation to go away. He's got the lowest approval ratings of any president at this point in the modern era, but apparently there's nothing to be done.
oh, there is something to be done. He's doing the exact opposite of what you need to do. He continues to increase spending. Look, when you pump that much money into the economy, it overheats it, and prices react to that. They go up to meet the amount of money that's available, right? If you're selling something for $2 one day,
Right.
but you realize that people have enough money to pay $3, you're increasing it to $3, right? And everything in that supply chain is affected in the same way. So their prices are going up to create the eggs. Look,
Right.
if we sat here today, we both ordered omelets, right?
Right.
Much more expensive for them to make an omelet for us today than it was 3 years ago. That has to be reflected in the price they charge us.
Sure.
So bring down government spending, we're going to bring down inflation.
So you
as a
think
result.
that the input side is the solution? There's not something else that you can do? Just
No.
pull the excess money out of the system. That's it. So you're a monetary supply guy. on
Absolutely,
that.
and that's
Okay.
what caused it. And if you don't
Right.
believe me, listen to Larry Summers,
Right.
who's hardly a conservative economist, being Bill Clinton's Treasury Secretary.
Right.
He predicted if Biden
Sure.
did what he was planning, we were going to have double-digit inflation, and we did.
What is the reason for the high price of gas? It just seems to be the thing that raises everything, and it shouldn't be. But
That's such. People think about families and take your kids to school. There are a lot of people whose jobs involve them having to drive around. They're in
Sure.
sales or they're truck drivers or whatever. So what should the Christie presidency policy be towards gas prices?
Well, first off, take the caps off of production of oil and natural gas in this country. If you talk to Governor Burgum, who's a candidate in this race, he'll tell you that when Biden came in, production of oil in North Dakota went down 1 million barrels a day. But it's not that we're not using it. No, now we're just buying it from the Middle Eastern countries or from Venezuela, for God's sake. So first off, take those caps off. Let people produce oil and natural gas. We can be energy independent in this country, and we should be. But also, we need to expand nuclear in this country. How does that affect the person filling their gas tank? Well, if you don't have to use oil or natural gas to fuel, your
Power
electric,
grid, right.
It's going to be more of that's available in the marketplace for gasoline, and that will drive prices down too. So, look, in our state, New Jersey, the most densely populated state in the country, 53% of our electricity is produced by nuclear. Now, if we can operate nuclear safely in the most densely populated state in the country, anybody can do it anywhere. The technology is much better now, and I would also expand the use of nuclear, and it doesn't add to our carbon problem.
So having lived in Jersey City, the idea that nukes are being run by guys in Jersey makes me a little nervous, but I'm sure that the folks at
You're
the
not
Supreme...
glowing.
That's true.
You're not glowing. You look fine.
That's true.
You look absolutely fine, Michael. You survived your time in Jersey City just fine.
I did, and I love living there, and I want to get to the Jersey City diner question in just a second. But one of the questions we got here at the airport diner was from a woman who had a small business, and then during COVID, the business went under. It just destroyed. And it's tough to be a small mom and pop business. What can a president do for, not the big guys, but for the small companies?
Give them first tax certainty. Let them know this is what your tax rate's going to be. It's not going to go up while I'm president, and so you know what your expense on the tax side is going to be. Secondly, deregulation helps tremendously, especially for small businesses. I ran a small business for the last 5 years, a consulting firm and a law firm, and it was amazing to me all the forms I had to fill out. We have to buy workers' compensation insurance as a law firm. And what's somebody going to get a paper cut? What's going to happen? But it's required by the government, right? And all these forms I have to fill out, and these things I'm supposed to hang in my office to advise people of their rights and all the rest of it. We need to get rid of much of that regulation because that costs money, because they have to hire lawyers and accountants to figure out how to comply with it. The third thing is, by setting up a situation where taxes are steady, deregulation is less, growth has the opportunity to happen because they can start to hire more people to help to execute their business, and they can do it with confidence because they know what their expenses are. That's what you need. And the rest of it is leave small business the hell alone. Because most of the time, if government stays the hell out of their way,
Right.
they're going to be just fine.
Okay, the last question, the one I'm most interested in. So I did live in Jersey City, and I discovered Jersey diner culture. I had no idea. I go to this diner, and they bring me a phone book. It's got 73 pages
Oh,
on it.
yeah.
I have a
They got
bookmark.
every type
so
of
two
food.
questions. How did that happen? Do you happen to know? And then what is your diner death dish? The one that you just, I know I shouldn't do this. I know I shouldn't do this. Mine involves corned beef hash. I love homemade, and they have, in New England, they have tons of great homemade corned beef hash. Give me corned beef hash, crispy on the outside, and a couple
Nice.
eggs on top. That's me.
You're in
What's
heaven.
yours?
All right. So the way it happened in New Jersey is that because New Jersey is the kind of state it is with so many different towns,
Right.
we have 585 towns, 535 towns rather, in our state, right? So
Right.
every one of those wanted a little place you could run in, grab something good and quick to eat, and run out before the fast food craze in
Got
this
it.
country started. But those diners survived it. And the way they survived is what you're talking about. They just kept offering more and more stuff. And so if you want to get some of that stuff, you got to go to a diner to do it. You know, the diner there's a lot of diners I love in New Jersey, but if you go on Route 3 in Clifton, New Jersey, and you go to the TikTok diner, it'll be an experience for you. And at that diner, they have a sandwich called the Mick Jagger.
The Mick Jagger.
Right.
Okay, got it.
And the Mick Jagger is like a breakfast sandwich that they make, and the reason why, and it comes with fries with gravy. And the reason why it's called the Mick Jagger is after the Rolling Stones had played at Giant Stadium one night, on their way out, they're coming down Route 3 and they see the TikTok diner, and Jagger says, let's stop there for something to eat. And that's what he ordered, and when he ordered it, they changed the name of it for Mick Jagger. So go to the TikTok diner and get a Mick Jagger, you'll be just fine.
I grew up in rural
He's
South.
80.
He's
He's lived fine.
Of course he is, because it's great food. You know,
That's
I grew up in
exactly
the
right.
rural South, and I thought I knew all the great foods, and I cooked for fun. When I moved to the Northeast and discovered fries and gravy, it was a revelation.
Oh, let me tell you, it's a whole thing, and that's why people in New Jersey, even with all our challenges, we're generally pretty happy at mealtime.
Governor Christie, happy to have you here for
Thank you.
Diner Table Economics. We really appreciate your time.
I'm happy to be here, Michael. Thanks for having me.
And there you have it, another episode of Diner Table Economics, live from the iconic Airport Diner in Manchester, New Hampshire. Thank you for being part of the conversation. Thanks to all of our New Hampshire Journal supporters for making the podcast possible, and a special thanks to the Competitiveness Coalition. Check them out at competitivenesscoalition.com. Thanks again for your time. I'm your host, Michael Graham.